So I wanted to talk about trauma. Trauma is something that is thrown around nowadays like a descriptor, which is something that is inherently ableist, in all honesty. When people are using trauma as a word to describe things that they're experiencing when they have no trauma, it is ableist to use that word as a descriptor. It's the same as using PTSD, like, oh, this video game or the situation is giving me PTSD, ha ha ha, in this kind of joking like manner, using it again as an excuse or reason or whatever for using it as a descriptor, when in actuality it's not a word to be used as such. If you have PTSD or if you have trauma, then yeah, go ahead and use those words. But if people are using those words just to describe what they're feeling in a moment, it isn't really okay. And as someone who has complex post-traumatic stress and who has a big challenge in trying to find things that actually work to help me, be able to get better, I guess. I can't take the medication that other people can take. I'm allergic to everything I've tried. It gives me bad thoughts, or I end up with facial swelling or tongue swelling or body swelling, which is very odd, but it's also part of the mast cell activation journey. So it's something that I can't just escape, right? I can't just take a pill and think that my mental state's going to get better. So I think when people do things like that, I find it to be very disheartening and irritating, to say the least, when they're using words like, oh, this is giving me PTSD, or I have trauma from whatever, and it may not necessarily be a trauma-inducing thing. It really rubs me the wrong way. So trauma is something that causes a lot of reactions within yourself and within your body. So you could be experiencing something like it happened yesterday, even though it happened like 5 years ago or 10 years ago. It's like you're reliving that moment when you're triggered into that. And that's another word that really irritates me, that people are just throwing around and using it as a descriptor, is triggered. Like, I'm so triggered right now. I know for myself, when I get triggered, I sometimes can't even say, like, I'm triggered. Like, that word doesn't come out. A sentence doesn't even come out. Sometimes I just literally shut off. So when people are saying, oh, I'm triggered right now by whatever, and using it as a descriptor, again, it falls into that realm of ableism, and people using it as a descriptor, which is odd to me. Considering we live in a time where people are all like, yeah, we're gonna like be accepting of other people and inclusive, and mental health matters, but at the same time they're still using ableist language and lingo, for lack of a better word, to describe what they're feeling, and then thus gatekeeping in a sense, and also shaming people by saying those kinds of things and using it and downplaying what those kinds of things actually are. And that's why it becomes an ableist thing. Like, when people do that kind of stuff and I call them out on it, I'm the bitch, apparently. But how? Like, if I want things to change and I want ableist language to be different, I want people to be better, be more thoughtful and empathetic towards people who have mental health issues, how are things going to change if we do not update our vernacular and our syntax and change the way that we talk to one another and change the way that we view mental health in general? So as someone who has complex post-traumatic stress and who has taken massive breaks from the internet, because stuff on the internet can be quite triggering, literally, and can cause a lot of harm to my psyche, it just really irks me that people keep using these words as descriptors when they should perhaps maybe try to understand someone's perspective. There's actually a video game, Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. And this game embodies mental health issues throughout it. And I would highly recommend anyone who's watching this, if you haven't played it and you don't have mental health issues, play that to see what it's like to be inside of someone's head who has psychosis, which is a state that people like myself with post-traumatic stress can actually go into and get lost in, which sucks, but it is a thing. And so it's important to notice, or at least try to put oneself in someone else's shoes to see what it would be like from their perspective, to see what kind of things they experience in that regard. And I remember playing the game before I was diagnosed with PTSD, and I was just like, wow, this is like a nightmarish world of confusion. And when I got to the end, I was just like confronted with these feelings of like, wow, I can't even describe it. It's actually a game that I really want to play again on Twitch and go through and kind of psychoanalyze it at the same time. While I'm not, at that point of being a psychoanalyst or anything like that, I am taking a lot of classes in psychology and I really enjoy it. And I think using it as a potential thesis, maybe for a grad paper, would be a really good idea. So that's kind of, anyways, the realms of where my brain is going with that. But using it as like a reference point for mental illness, because it is a video game that makes people think about mental illness. It puts you in a different situation than playing as a character in a fantasy world. So it is a very good game for mental health awareness and people getting a different perspective on mental illness. So I think it's good for that. I do find that there's just so much stigma around mental health still. I personally have tried to talk to people about PTSD and what it's like living with it. And I've had people tell me to stop being negative, stop, talking about your feelings so much. And so I stopped. And that prevents me from having close, intimate relationships with people because people are not willing to see the darkness that is in me when it comes to PTSD. And when I mean the darkness, I mean like the trauma and the things that have accumulated over the years that have skewed my thought patterns, right? Because of the trauma, because of things that do trigger me, and it changes you as a person. Like, I'm not the same person now that I was 5-10 years ago. Like, I am completely different because of the amount of therapy that I've gone through. Armpits itchy. The therapy that I've gone through and the progress that I've made as a person, as a person living with post-traumatic stress disorder, complex post-traumatic stress disorder for that matter. And it's changed me. And I wouldn't say that all of the changes have been bad because it's been a learning process. It's learning about like, oh, okay, like this is why I don't let people in, like this is why I have a hard time allowing people to see who I am because of how other people in the past have interacted with me when I've been at my absolute low. And then it's kind of like, am I painting everyone with the same brush? Yeah, maybe to some degree, but it's also like I'm trying to protect myself from getting scarred or marred even more. I don't want to put myself in situations where I'm going to massively trigger myself into a suicidal state. So I do what's best for myself. And I know that my behavior doesn't always make sense to other people, especially people that don't understand post-traumatic stress. They're like, I don't understand why you like talk to me a whole bunch and then you disappear for months. And that's because of fear. It's fear of, me sharing something with someone and then them turning around and using it against me sharing stuff with someone and then them just leaving my life anyways because they, don't want to deal with me at my best or at my worst or whatever, mostly at my worst. I have one IRL friend who is absolutely amazing, who she is there, like, no matter what I do. If I am at my absolute low and shit talking myself, which I do when I get into really depressive episodes with post-traumatic stress disorder, because that negative thought pattern is a part of that for me, she always reminds me it's the trauma talking. Like that right there, I wish and hope that everybody who has post-traumatic stress disorder can have at least one person in their life that is like that, who absolutely will not judge them for the things that they are saying when they are projecting all of that stuff that's happened to them on themselves and getting into that self-blame cycle. Having a friend remind you that that is your trauma and that is not you, it can make a massive difference in those moments when you're lost in your head, because post-traumatic stress pulls you back into the past, and it's not focusing on the past by choice. Like, it's not. And that's something I've had people tell me, oh, you're just dwelling on the past. You're just not letting things go. You're not doing, things to change your thought pattern or whatever. And it's like, it's easier said than done, especially if you don't have post-traumatic stress disorder, to ramble off a bunch of things that someone should do. And when it comes down to it, there are so many things that I have done and I have tried, and now I'm gonna go to a ketamine clinic, because at this point, I cannot take any of the medications they give to people with post-traumatic stress. I have done therapy for 5 years. 5 years. And I go up and then I crash down, because we dig and we try to get the pus out, in a sense, dig that shit out of our bodies from the traumatic events. And then you got to heal that. And then after you heal that one, you do it again to heal another one, because complex post-traumatic stress is multiple events in your life that equate to post-traumatic stress. It's complex because there's so many different things that make it. And I'm getting tired, to be honest. Like, it's hard. It's really hard. And I don't feel like I could talk to anyone about it. Like, I am stuck sometimes, and I shut myself off emotionally because I just don't want to get hurt anymore. Like, I'm so tired of people leaving or giving up or wanting to be in my life because they think that my strength is going to rub off on them, which I've had people admit to me in the past. I didn't get to where I am by taking the easy road in life. I got to where I am by going through the muck and the guck and the grime of what has been thrown at me. I am who I am because of the trauma that I've been through. I am who I am because of the diseases I have. I am who I am because I've had to be my biggest supporter, my biggest and bestest friend. So I didn't get to this point because I was leaning on other people. I got to this point because I had to lean on myself. And I'm telling myself now that I'm going to go to a ketamine clinic to help myself, because maybe it will make a difference. Maybe I will be able to change something in my brain, and maybe something will click and I won't feel like an outsider anymore. But maybe I always will feel like an outsider. I always have felt like that. I'm 37 now, so I'm not expecting that to change. But I just want something to look forward to, and I don't feel like I have much to look forward to as of late, especially with no visitors and that kind of stuff. And maybe partially that's my own fault for trying to protect myself from being further harmed by other people, but you have to do what is best for yourself. And especially if you're on a trauma journey of trying to heal your own trauma, sometimes you have to do that alone, and sometimes other people will not understand. So my biggest ask from this video is stop using mental health words as descriptors. Mental health words are not descriptors. They're not there to be used by able-bodied people who don't have mental health issues as a way of describing their feeling. It's like even saying that, oh, you're a psycho or whatever. Like, that is also, by the way, ableist. Like, stop doing that kind of stuff. It's not inclusive. It's isolating, and it makes people with those problems of psychosis or, post-traumatic stress or trauma, or people who have triggers, to not want to interact so much with people who do that, at least for myself. I can't talk about like everybody else in the world because I don't have their opinions, but for myself, if people are doing that kind of stuff and I tell them, hey, that's ableist, and then they tell me to like shut up or whatever, or no, it's not, haha, then it's kind of like, do I really want these people in my life? Probably not, because I'm just at that point where I try to educate people, and if there's a bunch of pushback and they're not willing to like change or look at themselves or reflect or, you know, be empathetic, I just walk away, because I don't need that extra stress in my life of arguing or disagreeing with someone about how what they're doing is discriminatory and then they just keep being discriminatory. I just don't need that in my life. So I don't think anyone needs that in their life. Anyways, I should probably head out. I do have a meeting, but I wanted to make a quick little video just talking about ableist language again, and also talking about the ketamine clinic that I'm going to be trying. And I'm going to document my journey with that as well, because having post-traumatic stress and being basically unmedicated is really hard. It's really hard, and it's exceptionally isolating. And I want change. I want change. So I'm going to do what I have to do for myself. And regardless of what anyone else thinks, I'm still going to do what's best for me. And if that's going to a clinic where they could potentially help me with psychedelics, I'm going to do that. I'm going to at least try. Anyways, have a good one. Thanks for being here. Take good care. I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.